dollar amount, like.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
All right, thank you.
So,
Okay, the April 21st Occupancy Tax Coordination Committee meeting to order. I need a motion to approve the March 24th minutes. Motion made by Supervisor Gilligan, seconded by Supervisor Runyon. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Staying.
Thank you. Privilege of the floor and public comment.
Good morning, everyone. Gina Mansour with the Lake George Regional Chamber of Commerce and CBB. I have two reports that's different than our normal occupancy tax report. One of them is on that affects our J1s and potentially our H-2B visa folks that come here. And as many of you know, we have between 9 and 1,200 that come throughout our summer and fall seasons. The federal government has, there was a State Department that sent a cable to consulates all around the world to say that they needed to look at the social media of those who have visas and that they could be questionable about their interactions within their countries. We already had one of our partners locally who said that 2 of their J1s, their visas were pulled. So I just wanted you to make that aware because it affects our workforce and during our summer season. So we don't know any more than this so far, and we'll stay in touch with those who we know that
We have to hold off. We can't distribute anything that hasn't gone onto the portal. We
okay,
need to take all of those pieces back.
okay.
I'm sorry.
Nope, that's okay. Understood.
We have
Sorry,
to send
Gina.
those back. I
Okay,
apologize.
We could
After
discuss
the
it. though.
meeting, we can absolutely discuss it.
yep, okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Thank you for that. The only other thing I won't distribute was a pacing report that kind of showed where we were, where we are right now and where we're going for this. It's a look ahead. While rates are trending up, our booking window is very short. We're off so far compared to the same time last year of pacing ahead as we look ahead. In the future, I'll know to, if I had thought about that in advance. I mean,
I
think
think
that
that we distribute in a public hearing. We need to make sure that the outside of this room persons have access to what we're doing. But thank you for that.
great, understood. Thank you.
Gina, I got a question for you. Is that affect we use InterExchange. They haven't given us an indication that we're gonna have a problem. Are there any countries that seem to be scrutinized a little more?
I don't know that answer, but I can find that out through,
Okay.
we've been on a few webinars over the last 2 weeks since this investigation came out to understand that. Apparently there was somewhere in Idaho, a resort in Idaho has been really dinged, and it might be the country where their folks are coming
Okay,
from.
because InterExchange says it seems like everything's flowing good. And any indication that's gonna affect H-2B visas or not?
No, it
Or it's
didn't
just
show up in the
J1?
report, not H-2B, H-1s.
Okay. Fingers crossed, oh boy.
Just ask you to explain the quick difference for those that don't know the difference.
Sure. That's a great question. So our J1s, it's a cultural exchange program through the State Department. So they're typically in college. They must still, be under an educational university in some way, shape, or form. And there is a company that works with certain countries and then with our employers. And there's probably a dozen of those agencies where it's like an externship program if you're in another country. Like, think about it, if you were in college and you wanted to go abroad and have a cultural exchange. So that's the J1 through the State Department. And then H-2B visas, that is a seasonal worker. Think about someone that you might have seen that is here, that's already been here all winter and through, it's a 6-month seasonal, and they can do anything. They can work in our kitchens, they can work in our exterior, in our landscaping. Major landscapers have them. I'm thinking of our RV parks that need a lot of exterior work. And that is through immigration. So a year ago, was it last year or the year before, when Biden, he opened up all of like 120,000. 2 years ago, 120,000 of those visas were allocated. And it's a lottery program. And so we have people that get in the lottery from A's to F's. And so what we understand is that here locally, the people that we talk to, most of them were getting their H-2Bs as was reported. So that's really the difference of the two. And again, difference between State Department and Immigration.
J1's 120 days.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks, Gina. Thank you. Anybody else like to speak? No new business. We'll move on to discussion items.
Excellent, thank you so much. So we're gearing up for next year. And what I want to do today, this is just simply a discussion, there is no resolutions for us. I would like to go to page, we've numbered them here, which is great for you, my former chair. We numbered it, so page 5 through 8 is the application recommendation that was presented and approved at the last process we went through. And so therefore, I'm just going to go through the process of what someone would do when they apply, just because we've got some new committee members and I want to make sure that we're all on the same page. So looking at page 6, there's a couple of requests up to $50,000, and it goes directly to an online application login that you apply for, and only for-profits and nonprofits apply through here. This is has nothing to do with municipalities. That is a whole separate application. This is speaking to the event funding. The only difference that we're looking at here in this particular process is that signature events that attract more than 50,000 people are able to ask for additional dollars over the 50. That is what we're recommending, which is different. And the reason for this is trying to keep our dollars supporting more of the larger events and the ability for them to continue to attract these additional attendees. They have to do that by calling the office so that we can get an approval by the committee to then apply for those funds. So just because they ask, the committee has to then approve that process and approve that particular organization to apply more than those funds. Then I'm going to quickly go through the process of their logging in, their existing users, they have their information, they know where to go. New users, they must get approval to enter into the platform. So that we're making sure, number one, are they representing Warren County events and activities? There's a dashboard that'll have historical data of the organization, the events that organization runs, could be multiple. The applicants that we talk to that are part of that application, any awards in the past, and then analytics. Analytics is a bigger piece of this here, and I'll go through that a little bit later. The applicant then goes through the managing an organization, and this is just the details of it. I'm going to quickly go through this. It's the organization, the contacts, the address, the city, zip, email, contact, so on and so forth. The type of organization, not-for-profit, for-profit, 501c3, 6, for-profit, a new event, or something in the first 5 years. This is important because way back when is what my understanding is, I was not here, that a lot of this funding came about to support newer events and to get them off their heels and running. So that'll be taken into consideration in the scoring. For-profit, hosting 6 or more years. Event name, amount of occupancy tax they're requesting, the municipalities, categories, new event, annual. And then details, moving on to page 7. Looking at the different seasons, because we want to support those seasons that we're trying to build and bring more events to in those particular seasons. Total number of attendees, how they determined the total number of attendees. So it's important that they identify whether it's prior surveys they conducted by zip codes or some other way they develop that within their pro forma. And then whether they work with third parties, i.e. sometimes they work with both the CBB and or the chamber to help run their event. And then geographic area for marketing and target audience. And then their budget in detail. So going on to the bottom part, this year, we'd like to open the application period up August 1st to September 15th. And then we'd like to just do a presentation of those new events. Or ones that have not been funded in the past. Bigger reason is I know that we all sat through a full day of fun and entertainment. I'm not sure that, and the feedback that we got from committee members was it's not, the best use of time. And some of these events, we already know what they are. Then moving on to the scoring. This is the key piece that I'm gonna have Paul go into a little bit detail because of the scoring and the way that the rubric is. All of the scoring is done based on what the applicants submit. And therefore, it's important that we recognize how this is written in a way that awards those events that bring in the most attendees during the times that we need it. And they tend to get more of the dollars that they request. This is a score of 100, you get an 80, you get 80% of your request. Very simple like that. So I'm not going to read through in details, but I want Paul to really talk about, as he works behind the scenes with the IT department, building this platform. And it's important to hear some of the things that he identifies and sees. So Paul, if you wouldn't mind talking about the scoring of it and how important it is to utilize a system that allows for, a more true and accurate number.
Right, so these are value metrics that we've observed for 20 years for the most part. The most important metrics that we take into account, we consider an applicant. In the past, the applicants have come before the committee and it's kind of like intellectual joust, you know what I mean? Kind of like they make their case and then the supervisors weigh it based on their assessment of that applicant's description of their event. This new application takes into account hard numbers. Time of year, the season you're holding your event is going to generate a certain amount of points, total number of attendees, total number of room nights, and then the committee itself has the final 20 points. So 80 points are out there up for grabs for any applicant that comes in. So an applicant comes in and requests, let's say, the maximum amount. Based on the metrics, I mean, unless they're, an Americade type of event, they're not going to be generating these tens of thousands of people. So they're not going to hit that, that high 100 points. That's if all the supervisors, allocate their points and all of those metrics are met. A lot of these events kind of fall in the middle someplace. And so they'll generate points based on those number of rooms. It's a fair process because it directs those dollars to events. Let's say Americade, for example, tens of thousands of people come here. And maybe to put on an event like that, $50,000 doesn't cut it anymore. It's not easy for them to do that. So these guys, I would call them our signature events, the 5 signature events of the year. In our opinion, and I think that of the past committees, these huge numbers that they generate, they should have the option to come to the committee and ask for, more money. And that's what this system allows for.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
No. You have more?
No, that's pretty much it.
Thank you. And so really the role of the committee today is to discuss this. First of all, the highlighted stuff are the changes we're looking to do. One of the things that have also been brought up is whether or not we want to continue to bring through, and keep me honest on my wording, continue to bring through a lot of these resolutions each year. Doesn't mean we don't come before the committee and get a committee approval, but to go before the board for some of these changes, i.e. if nothing changes next year, but the dates are definitely going to be changing because every year the dates change, to allow us to move forward within the department, but get a committee sign off going forward. That was something that was presented to me this morning. But regardless, for the next meeting, I'm going to have to prepare a resolution with identifying either these changes or identifying the committee as the oversight of the department to decide whether changes can be made going forward on the application itself. So I actually will turn it back over to the committee and you, carte blanche here. Anything with regards to the application process is what I think that should happen at this discussion.
Questions from the committee? Supervisor?
I'm looking at the total room nights here and it strikes me that the 45 points is just a massive, well, it's almost half of the award scoring process. So how do you handle that? Like, for instance, if somebody's coming in the summertime and pretty much in the summertime, hotels should be full no matter what anyway. So if they're having an event in the summertime, how do you award 45 points when a hotel generally is filled regardless?
It's not necessarily a matter of what's currently happening in the environment, in the hospitality, at the hotels, but rather what that particular event is going to generate. So I'll give you some examples of some of the analytics that we're going to be using. An event is 5 days, so we're going to use probably a 6-night analytic review. We will give an average of those many nights, the ADR, the occupancy, and it will be a trend based on the last couple of years. So you'll be able to see the fluctuation within the market itself, but also have the event, because we want them to do a little research in understanding their performance. We want them to understand that the more heads and beds you create, the more opportunities we have to fund in the future, and so on and so forth. So with that, they're going to provide this number. Those analytics double check that number to say if it's realistic or not. But then we can also see how successful the event is within what it returns, because there will also be visa spend data within this. So we will also look at those particular days and identify how much dollars have been increased or decreased over that particular time of when that particular event is taking place. We couldn't do this in the past because of the way we bought the data. So now we can do it going forward because we're purchasing the data differently, and it's not, it's giving us more of the daily activity versus the quarterly activity. So to answer your question with regards to how can we tell, or not how can we tell, but the effects of the summertime travelers. Sometimes we have some off weekends in the summer. And so specifically, right after, July 4th. And so we want an event, we want to make sure that there's an event, or Memorial Weekend, I'm sorry. And so we want to make sure that there's an event. And so even though the summer is our biggest time, the event might be successful for us. It might not just be in our core areas. It might be in the outskirts of other areas. Could be in Hank.
And also, Supervisor, if it's in the summertime, you're not gonna generate the maximum number of points. They're gonna generate 5 out of 15 points. That's gonna hit that.
That's a great point.
And also, if it's if they got 50,000 people coming for the day and they're not generating a lot of room nights are gonna take a hit also. So it's not just one single number that determines this. It's a compilation of all 4 metrics.
And that's a great point, because that goes back to what he was saying before, that the system works. So summer is not really one we're hitting as high. They only get 5 points in the event season. And so that will then bring it down, the summer, because we want more in the off peak, and so we look at it in that way as well. So even though maybe they'll bring in the number of room nights, but they're in the summer, they'll get less points up at the top. Did I answer your question?
Kind of.
Yeah, I want, I
Yeah,
just
please,
wanted, to your point, Supervisor Patchett, and tell me if my numbers are off, but if you look at June, I think overall occupancy in Lake George region is probably 60 to 65%. And tell me if my numbers are wrong.
No.
If you look at July, we're probably in the 80 to 82%. If you look at August, we're in the 92%, because the last week of August, when the kids are starting to go back to school, brings it down. If you look at September, we're probably back in the 65 68%. You agree with those numbers?
Yes.
So there is room for groups to come in. Everyone looks at Lake George, oh, Lake George is packed in the summer. It is crowded in the summer, but there's room. And, you know, just there's availability still. Supervisor Patchett?
But to me, when I hear those numbers you just gave us, Mr. Chairman, that means that we should be basing it off of the percentage from, 82% to 100%. Only that 18% should be what's awarding that 45-point value, not the 82% that we have regardless.
At that time period?
Yeah, whether it's like if it's August, like you said, and there's only an 8% difference there in occupancy, that would mean to me that your 45-point valuation there should only be based off of that 8% difference that you're actually making as a event.
So you're looking at it as making part of the equation, the occupancy for the prior year? Is that what I'm hearing? Or the occupancy that we're looking to achieve?
Just saying, if people are already here at 92%, regardless of whether there's an event or not, then it doesn't have an impact on what we're doing. Only the 8% has an impact. That's just me thinking out loud.
It's a good point. I understand what you're saying. If you spread it out and just something to consider, and if you spread it out into Queensbury, Glens Falls and North, I think the percentages of occupancy will drop even farther. So as you get a group in those prime times, business spreads out, even if the group is right in Lake George. Heather, do you agree with that?
Yeah, and but that's a great point as well.
So to discount it exactly that based on the Lake George model might be a little unfair to the rest of the county, because I think the county percentages would drop a little bit. And it's, June in Queensbury, I don't know Queensbury numbers, but it's less than what we're doing in Lake George. You agree?
It is like, 100%. So I
Good
think it's
point.
also looking at the ability to spread it out, push it out. And vice versa. It's kind of like in the summer, we want to push it out this way, and in the winter, we want to pull it in this way. And so, but that was looking at just Lake George in itself and not necessarily the county. We can also look at the county as well.
Right. Yeah, I'm just making the point that if you start, giving away, like, for instance, if somebody comes in July and you're at 80% occupancy throughout the county and they get 80% of the 45 points, it's not really a good way to value it. I know I'm being repetitive, but I'm just trying to hone in on what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And events create demand even when you're busy, which helps drive rate. Supervisor Runyon?
Does the heads and beds include short-term rentals too?
So this is totality of any type of overnight stay.
Any questions? I have one quick
Yeah.
one. You talk about anchor events not having to come back in front of committee, possibly.
They're more of those that we know are repetitive, like the Americade and
They
they,
still have to fill in an
Oh, yeah,
application, so,
absolutely.
okay, because
yes, and you
I mean-
still have to vote on it. So the committee still has to do their due diligence of voting within the platform. And my apologies, if you look at page 3 and 4, this is the short version of an application, or a report of the application that will be given to each of you to score during those times. So you'll have an ample amount of time within those beautiful little packets that Paul creates for each and every one of you. And so we will identify those that you need to score ahead of time, which are events that are have already taken place, and we've heard them many, many times. But they still have to apply, and they still will be recorded, and you will on back of page 4 is where you score them based on those 5 criteria. Because we'll go back in and plug these numbers into the portal. So just a quick overview going from top to bottom. It's the organization name and whether it's a for-profit, nonprofit. the event details, this is what the monies they're asking for, whether they ask for municipal dollars and the year they started, and then just some detailed information about event dates and what the dollars would be used for. The location, some are just in one, some are multiple. The information on your details and whether you know, your day visitors, overnight visitors, what you produce, so on and so forth, working with anyone. So all those questions that we were looking at in the application now populate onto this sheet. So the target, our geography area, target audience. And then this is our historical data that we're going to be putting in here to show the difference. Another thing we're also keeping track of, but it's not on here. It's just more, it's the season, the weather. Because we all know weather plays a significant role. And so we have the ability to look back and say what the weather was without having to utilize Google. So we'll be keeping track of this year of all the events and what the weather was like, so that if we do see a dip in those numbers, we can qualify it as well with some of those details, and then the budget summary, and then the supervisor scoring for that.
Thank you. Supervisor Gilligan?
I was just wondering, how does this impact one-day events?
So in last year, in managing the budget and looking at what dollars we had, we had to not fund one-day events. That doesn't mean that that's what we're doing in the future. It just was looking at all the events. We had over, what was it, $1.5 million in applications. And we just can't sustain that from a annual budget. We like to keep it around 1% to fund
Right.
events.
Yeah, just 'cause, last year, Wingfest brought in like 7,000 beds and heads in Glens
Yeah.
Falls, and they were,
Yeah, so unfortunately, we had to make a decision, and we may have to be put in those situations and make those types of decisions. And what we did is we just analyzed it, the data and how it came in, and just looked at some low-hanging fruit that could potentially go back to municipalities. And that's what we want to start keeping track of, is the fact that we're not the only funding source here. We want to fund these events. It's important for us to be a part of these events. But we have to start recognizing that municipalities have dollars as well. Individual municipalities have dollars. And so don't forget to look there as well. Some do a great job and some don't even know it's available. So it's the education of it. So I don't know that that'll be the case this year. We have to see where the budgets come in. And again, there are recommendations if the committee feels that you want to push, sort of push it down the road and allocate those dollars when they come in and take that chance. I don't recommend that at all. But the decision lies with the committee. And so those are some things that we do have to look at, just to be very budget conscious.
thanks.
Supervisor Patchett?
Yeah, I was just gonna bring up that I think it's good to have this scoring chart, but and it helps us, assess the return on investment. But it's also gonna be true to say that there's gonna be certain events that come to us that just don't fit in the box. Meaning they're just not gonna score what we need to see the scores to be able to really award the bid. I mean, even like when I look at number 4, that, the committee is allowed to award up to 20 points. Well, I'm looking at that and I'm saying, well, not necessarily, because you define it in 4 or 5 point categories. So there's still going to be events that just don't seemingly check all the boxes, but are important to the community that we might want to have some sort of an override in place for.
Absolutely. So during this process, you have access to these books, each and every one of you. You have the ability to bring in, somebody that we might have said has been here for a long time. And you have the ability to, have a discussion amongst the committee, because we will do that. So we take the scoring, we then bring it before the committee. If there's a certain event that you want to pull out and have a larger discussion on, that absolutely can happen. That is within the process of this. So, outside of the scoring, if there is a certain event that you feel might need to be pulled out of that scoring, the committee has that ability. So there is ample time within the process to allow the committee to then go outside of this preview and look at an individual event.
Thank you.
Supervisor Runyon?
Where it says, do you anticipate working with another party? Can you define what another party means?
So, it could be any one number of things. There's so many things that the CVB works with some of these organizations, the chamber works with some of these organizations, or both of that. Some also may work with an event coordinator or a, event coordination organization.
Mhm.
So it's just a matter of giving us all the details. So should we need to contact that person who runs the event or needs to be involved in those communications that we make sure we can.
That's
we
for
can do that.
marketing, you mean?
It's for marketing because a lot of the requirements is to make sure our logo's on there,
Right.
right terminology, things like that.
Mhm.
So there's a bigger need for us to need to include everybody in that bubble.
Thanks.
Questions?
So we will take this back. I'm gonna look a little bit more deeply into some of the comments that you made with regards to reviewing. There's no decisions that need to be made at today's meeting. We will bring back a resolution for the next meeting, and if it still needs to be worked on and discussed, we can continue discussing it. There's ample time to do so.
Very good, thank you.
Thank
Now that
you.
you talk about bringing funding back to the towns, is there, and maybe we can't implement that this year, but will we put a dollar amount? If it's 5,000 or less, goes back to the towns. If it's 10,000 or less, it goes back to the, or is it something that?
Well, the committee can decide if there's parameters they want to put around that. Right now, and what we did last year is we didn't look at any parameters outside of what the scoring produced. And then we analyzed all of them amongst each other and looked at for some commonalities, not at the name of the event and not where it is, but commonalities of there were a couple one-day events, so that shaved off this amount of money. And it's just kind of like doing a budget sheet. Like, do I really, I really need to have 10 pens, I can get 5. Those types, it's really more of a budget crunch to
Mhm.
kind of get to the closest to the number that we possibly can. So right now, there is no thresholds added onto anything. This committee has the ability to add those on. If you feel like, I don't want to say don't apply if you're only asking for 5,000, because then they're going to apply for 7,500. Just being real and honest.
Mhm.
And I don't want to say don't do one-day events because there are other values in those. So I think it's a matter of the scoring running where it is. And we're spitting out the dollar figure. And then if we need to work out and look for common denominators of what I call to pull the budget down a little bit into or pull the numbers down into the number that we feel most comfortable with. And that's anywhere about 1 to 1.5% of the annual budget is at least what has been trending.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job, thank you. Yep. County Treasurer, Christine Norton, want to give a report?
Tissues.
It's definitely in your packets.
Issue.
Tissues.
Oh,
For reference, it's on page 9. At page 9 and 10 in the application packet. Sorry, the agenda packet. That's what we're doing. Thank you.
Good morning, thank you. So before I get into this, just another quick recap on 2024. So we were up about $400,000, 450, and about 350 of that was through enforcement. So we were up about $100,000 year over year in pure occupancy tax. Okay, this is now looking at the beginning of 2025, specifically February, March, April. Again, very early days, kind of hard to get a trend, but there was a couple of funky numbers, which is why you see a lot of the adjustments here. It turns out that there was a timing difference in February and March of last year. We had one specific hotel, motel, and resort that was late on a payment for whatever reason, and it knocked both February and March off about $20,000. So instead of seeing total collections at 42% increase for February, when we made that adjustment, it came down to 12%. So that's much more accurate number. All right, so 12% for February and 6% in March, and then about 7% overall in April. Hotels, motels, and resorts, so the top number is total collections, so hotels, motels, resorts plus STRs. Down at the bottom, you will see hotels and motel collections. Again, those numbers, 49 was an incorrect, or was an anomaly because of a timing difference, just like the total collections. Again, you see 13, 8, and 2%. So that's more reasonable. Again, early days. Early days, but again, you know, they are positives as opposed to negatives. So that's at least a positive. And then on the back, short-term rental collections, again, -9, -5, January, February, March, very, you know, for short-term rentals, it's a low season. You'll see in April, it's up 28%. Again, that's an increase of 28% on a small number. Again, remember, our hotels, motels, and resorts are about 80% of our number for total collections, and the STRs are about 20% of the collections. Questions? Thank you.
Christine, real quick, where are the penalties factored into?
Penalties and interest?
Yeah, and nothing on here, correct?
Right, penalties and interest,
Yep.
and you asked the question last time. We had a big jump in penalty, like 160,000 last year, penalties and interest that went to the general fund because of the enforcement issues.
Yeah,
There was a question, in the last committee meeting, and I apologize, I don't have an answer for you. Historically, it has always gone into the general fund because it's an effort of the, you know,
yeah.
penalties and interest, it's the effort of the office, to get that money, and it's always gone into the general fund.
Fine, thank you. Questions? Thanks, Christine.
Thank you.
Good job. Thank you. Gina Mintza, Lake George Regional CVB First Quarter Report. Hi, Gina.
And this is page 11 and beyond in the agenda packet.
And I have copies too, just in case. Are you done?
Yeah, well, we were asked to print them early this morning and
Oh,
so
okay.
I apologize.
That's all right. We were too.
My communication was, but anyone on the outer parts who doesn't have one, it's just passed out to the members of the committee.
And you have a PowerPoint? Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So our PowerPoint is basically a summation and so I'm gonna walk through it just to in essence of timing and efficiency. So we'll just go to the next slide. So just a reminder that all the activities that we present are all with our 2025 to 2027 sales and marketing plan that was presented in advance last year. That speaks to our budget. Our core markets are the corporate association meetings, sports, weddings, SMERF. And SMERF, just so you understand, is social, military, education, religious, and fraternal organizations. So they're typically smaller groups and rate what we would consider rated business. And then group tours, bus tours. Our focus is always to increase group visitor-related economic impact to Warren County. And our performance benchmarked by our what we call our KPIs, key performance indicators, are leads generated, bookings, booked attendees, booked room nights, economic and employment impact, meetlakegeorge.com visits, and that social media engagement. So based on page 2 of your packet, 42 leads were generated, 24% of our annual goal to date. 25 bookings were confirmed in this Q1, 22% of our annual goal. 3,438 attendees with 3,179 room nights for 4.4 economic and employment impact. Again, that was all in Q1. And then 340 new social media followers. And just to give you a general idea, again, anybody that we're targeting is a meeting and event professional, not a leisure traveler, we're not looking at them as followers. We want people that actually have the opportunity to book a piece of business to bring a piece of business here that we can book. the economic and event impact snapshot, again, and this goes back to page 3 of our report. So 10 convention calendar events were generated within this period with a $3 million economic impact. 4 were major sporting events at Gore Mountain and the Pool and Shoring Arena, 3 hockey events at Pool and Shoring Arena, and a New York State Nordic skiing event at Gore. And then of that 3,700 booked room nights and 2,300 attendees were attributed again to those 10 convention calendar events. And throughout this period, we tracked like who we're reaching through our microsites and through the events that are here. And that came to close to 8,900 current and future attendees, because microsites are active now for future events, but they've been created in this time frame for meeting and announcement. And so those were served during this whole Q1 for events and through activities. So based on pages 3 and 4, you'll see that we attended the American Bus Association, and we had a very great, robust set of appointments during this time. We had 28 appointments, 92 connections, and those connections include contacts that we also received from the state that we get to follow up on that we didn't get to meet while we were physically there, but we received those through Heather and the Warren County Tourism Department as the tourism promotion agency, which then we put into our database and we followed up on. And in this time frame, because of that one trade show, we were able to generate 7 leads and 7 bookings in this Q1 for that time frame. And later I'm going to speak to Supervisor Wild asked us to add an additional report of what was booked in a particular year. So it's the very last report of this, and it puts those events in chronological order. So we'll get to that. In the meetings market, we attended a few events that were more networking functions. We had an event in New York City along with I Love New York, and the Queensberry Hotel was our partner that went with us. And that was it's our 2nd year of doing this event. It's been very helpful for us in the corporate market that comes out of New York City. And then events that were booked that were because of other statewide association interactions, we were able to book School Business Association, and we're also working on the New York State Assessors event that's coming up. And we had 2 events that we've been working on because of staff on our of Warren County. The coroners that were just here, and then future finance officers. So again, we're hailing those who actually work here in Warren County and championing their events to be here. So looking forward to that.
In the fall,
Right,
right? Tina, tourism in the fall.
oh yeah, we've got tourism in the fall, but we'll talk about that after this week. Yeah. Convention services highlights are on page 5 of your report. So 5 major events were serviced, meaning, and 3 microsites were launched. And so far of those, 1,700 microsite views. So that means, so we might have a microsite on let's say on a hockey, on their website, and it'll be all about Warren County and what's happening here for them while they're coming to town, so they can pre-plan. Our goal is to get people to pre-plan. They're coming here, oh, we get to do these other things while we're in town. 232 partner referrals for 21 clients. So we might have had a bride who is having a wedding here later this year, and we might have sent her referrals to accommodations that have availability, to a bakery, to a photographer. That's what what we mean by referrals, different than leads. And then welcome bags that were distributed to Public High School Athletic Association and other events that were in town. Page 7 for our next slide is marketing and media exposure. So 24,000 website visits, and that comes back to, we're sending people back to the website, Meet Lake George, and then Visit Lake George is an extension of that as well. And so we're sending people to both websites to keep them engaged with us and all about Warren County. Top blog post had 1,000 views, and they see that through our direct email to those meeting and event planners. So we're talking about, you know, winter meetings at the time. We're talking about plan ahead for your spring and summer meetings, and as well as the things that you can do while you're here, team building, that for group activities. And then, the next slide, our social media performance. Again, that is, we do that through both organic and paid, but to see an increase of 17,000 reach impressions across all platforms, and that would be Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And you'll see again on that page 8, the number of new followers, you know, how Facebook outperformed Instagram, which is interesting because it goes back to the age, quite honestly, of those that we're targeting. Our meeting and event planners are older. So they'll go to Facebook before they'll go to Instagram. We see in our wedding markets, it's all visual, Instagram, it's all over that, and it's a much younger demo. LinkedIn impressions grew by 10%, and that's been a big push of ours because we're able to talk about the value of meeting and events just in general, but then why Warren County is the place to be for your meeting and event. Sorry, I put this slide here. I should have put it earlier, but our community engagement and development is actually on page 6 of your report. But so we participated in the SAMM event. SA is the Empire State Society of Association Executives, and they're the mothership of all state associations. And that's where we're interacting with those meeting and event planners and CEOs of those associations, where we need to always be facing them to get their future business. And staying on, you know, just developing our staff and team. And Destinations International is the mothership of all convention and visitors bureaus and many tourism associations, to knowing what's happening now and in the future for trends and education. That's our go-to for that. And then we, as you know, we do monthly CDB meetings and disseminate a variety of information, but also get that information back and forge those connections among our destination partners. And just the last several, all the spreadsheets that you see go back to, that's not here, all of the spreadsheets that are in your packet. It starts with our leads, our bookings, pending business, lost business, the events that were serviced, so you know who were you talking to and all those services for. And then the event tracking. So how many leads were already generated from ABA and events that we go to that are like trade shows. And that's an ongoing. So hopefully you'll see more come out of that ABA next quarter and the following quarters. And then the very last one, Supervisor Wild had asked to see events that were booked, and he wanted them to see it by year. So we took the event bookings and then just put that in chronological order. So every event that was actually booked in this Q1 is actually for 2025. Whereas last year, when you asked for that for the Q4 report, when we ran it, you could see, oh, there was this many for 2024, this many for 2025. So we understood exactly what you're requesting. Hopefully that meets what you had wanted to see. Okay.
And Gina, that's the title of the 2025 booking event dates, correct?
Correct.
And for the committee members, it's on page 35 and 36. Printed it just the committee model you're referencing, and
Oh, I apologize for that.
no, it's I need to think with you better. All good.
Any questions?
I want to say this is, this gives a full breadth of details of what the CBB does for us, and it's a lot. And they handle it flawlessly, and they know, been doing it for decades. So I love this because it just gives it in layman's terms, and sometimes it just needs to be broken out like that. So thank you, Gina. You're welcome. I appreciate that.
Questions? Good job, Gina. Thank you. Good report. Questions? Moving on. Referrals, none, and privilege of the floor and public comment.
Sorry, just one of those one or two other points. I should have shared with you on this report. Thank you for bringing up the 160,000. So I think you remember last year the goal for the enforcement efforts was about $1 million. We were hoping to get anywhere from 250 to 650 from Granicus, and I was hoping to get about 500,000-600,000. To date, we have 350 recovered in enforcement plus 160. So we're about $500,000 on enforcement issues this year. We're expecting another 250 and whatever interest penalty is on that. So we're not gonna hit the $1 million, but we're gonna get close. Granicus unfortunately was the gap. And as I shared with you, I think it was at the board meeting. They felt the 100,000 that we're up overall in tourism, or excuse me, in occupancy tax. It's about 75,000 from Granicus, the campaign that we just went through, plus 25 here and there, you know, just in regular upticks of business, let's call it. So with that, just with the whole Granicus thing, we're looking at 4 different vendors to see who we might want to work with go forward. Granicus may not be it. We're looking at Deckard, we're looking at BOS, and we're looking at Tyler. Doesn't look like it's gonna be, well, I don't know. I don't know about Tyler. I haven't seen that yet. So what we're looking to do is automate the end-to-end process and have a customer portal so that we can be more strategic and more enforcement based from a, you know, tax perspective in the treasurer's office. And that's a big thing. And then, sorry, there was one other thing. Oh, wanted to give you an update on the New York State sales tax law. I had mentioned before that Airbnb was being quite difficult. And actually Kevin Garrity said to me, it doesn't really impact us because, you know, we get it from our STR owners anyway, directly. That is true historically. However, Airbnb is making it very difficult. They do not like, actually, all the platforms are a little bit, the New York State law is onerous, and the registration validation that the platforms have to go through. Basically, they can't put anybody on their websites if they don't come and validate them with the counties first. And that is proving very difficult. And there are some steep penalties with that. So all of the platforms, we're working with them. Larry's joining me. My team is joining me. So far, we've met with Airbnb, VRBO. We have bookings.com this week and a second meeting this week with VRBO. VRBO is very, you know, they don't like the validation either, and it's going to create a lot of headaches for them. But at least they're willing to say, we're going to collect for you every day, you know, of the week, twice on Sundays, and then we're going to give you all of the detail so that, you know exactly what you got. We just don't want to do the verification process. So in a nutshell, if they give me the report and it's got 125 hotels, motels, STRs, and yet our robust registration registry that we have only has 100, I can go out and find those 25 people. So it's a manageable situation. However, Airbnb not interested in playing fair. What they want to do is they want to keep all of their voluntary agreements in place, and we've never been a fan of their voluntary agreements. So they want us to opt out and opt into their voluntary agreement. So to get the voluntary agreement, and again, they're just going to give us, you know, they'll collect for our STR owners and then remit it to Warren County, but they're not going to give us any details. And what they're saying is you have an audit clause, so you can audit us. So, and the one thing that, Kevin, this is to your point, they're actually now stopping collecting occupancy tax for Warren County STR owners. So it is proving problematic for STR owners in Warren County because, you know, they're on Airbnb, and suddenly Airbnb is no longer going to collect the occupancy tax on their behalf and send it to the STR owners so that they can remit it to us. You know, our STR owners are saying, how can we do it? And again, it's not like they can just add 4% on top of their nightly rates, because the 4% is also on the cleaning. It's also on the animal fees. It's also on extra guests. So it's a little bit cumbersome. A short answer for them is that you don't have to deal with it. You know, go to VRBO, or I don't know where booking.com is going to fall out because we'll talk to them this week. So just know, you know, we're literally on this every week. It's definitely onerous and it's changing, it's evolving. But Airbnb is gonna be a sticky wicket, but we'll figure it out. Any questions? Yep,
So I mean, ultimately, the host is, has a sales tax number with the state, so they're obligated to pay sales tax. Period.
true. And honestly, and Larry and I are gonna talk more on this. When I've read the law several times, the New York State sales tax law, STR sales tax law several times. And to me, it's very clear that they're mandating that the platforms collect not only the New York State sales tax, but the occupancy tax. But people are, you know, not totally in alignment on that. So that's where there's some play right now. But you're right, the platforms 100% are gonna send New York State all 7%. And they'll get back to us like they always do with our 3%. The occupancy tax, again, some of the platforms are very willing to work with us and Airbnb is continuing to be a little difficult.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Privilege of the floor?
I just have a
Supervisor
question.
Patchett?
I think it was a couple of months ago. I missed last month's meeting unfortunately, but there was a question about an update on Winter's Dream and where we're at with that. Is there an official county update on Winter's Dream and if it's gonna be continuing in 2026?
As soon as one becomes available, I will definitely let you know.
Thank you.
I have a little bit.
Yeah,
more
but
info. Not a lot, but I think they're gonna come in May and present and speak to us.
We look forward to it.
Me too. Anything else? Motion to adjourn. Motion made by Supervisor Runyon, seconded by Supervisor Patchett. Further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.